So this week's episode is with Mike Cunliffe. So I wanted to do an episode with a track and field coach specifically, just because, I mean, let's face it, their job is to solely get players faster and work with some of the best athletes in the world in track and field. So I want to get somebody on. Mike was recommended to me, and he's very, very good. So he's the head coach of the Seattle Speed Track Club, and he works with NFL players, NBA players, Major League Baseball players. And he's someone who he gets really in depth in this episode. And so if you're someone who really wants to know the ins and outs of how do you actually go about developing speed and aren't afraid of some big words, this is going to be a good episode for you. So here we go with Mike Cunliffe. All right, we now welcome onto the podcast Mike Cunliffe. Mike, thanks for coming on the show today.
Absolutely, Patrick. Looking forward to it.
So you're currently the head coach of the Seattle Speed Track Club. You've been doing that for a very long time.
Yeah, over 20 years now.
Over 20 years. So
yes.
I actually want to start out. I read this quote earlier on social media, and I want to get your thoughts on this. So,
sure.
Sprint drills don't teach athletes to run faster, but they do teach them where to place body parts. They also serve as a great dynamic warm-up and evaluation method for injuries and a screen as to whether you need to adapt a planned workout or not. Agree or disagree?
Disagree.
Disagree.
Yeah.
Why?
Max velocity training and biomechanical expression are two separate workouts. So if you're doing max velocity work, a human being decelerates of all-out sprinting. Every human being starts decelerating at 6.5 seconds, and they're in glycogen at 7. Prior to that, they're using creatine phosphate, which fires your muscles slightly over 2 times faster than the glycogen. This is why on the back end of 100 meters, every athlete at 7 seconds is an alactic anaerobic glycolytic, or the street term short speed endurance, not because track coaches voted on this, but because it's human physiology switching your ATP production from creatine phosphate to glycogen. Biomechanical expression work is done at slower speeds and also in conjunction with body workers that are optimizing the human body's relationship to gravity. So any asymmetrical loading patterns that are occurring in the body, we want to remove these so the body has more of an oscillation component when it's sprinting. The more neutral the body is to gravity, the easier it is to move, the easier it is to have biomechanics, and the easier it is to have force output. So what makes someone fast is max velocity work. Now that max velocity work can be done in different ways. We can do short sprints of 3 to 7 seconds. 3 seconds to get an adaptation, but no more than 7 seconds because you switch to glycogen.
No, when you're training your athletes, when you guys practice, it's never more than 7 seconds if they're sprinting.
No, that's incorrect, because you asked specifically about max velocity work. So I'm answering that question in regards to max velocity work. So everything after 7 seconds is a percentage of your top end. So what we do is we time the fly 30. We see the season's previous PRs or lifetime PRs. We know what those are in relation to a fly 30 time. So everybody's decelerating at 7 seconds. So if you alter someone's max velocity, every percentage of that is going to be faster. So if you have a fly 30 of 3.03, which would be 11 flat in the 100 meters, and you want to go 1070. So 1070, you're going to need a fly time of around 2.99, 2.98 on a fly, in order to get that 1073, 1072, 1074 zone. So if I don't change the max velocity, then what you're really doing is strengthening the present max velocity that's present. Now, some coaches will say, well, my guys ran faster. they ran faster because you did a better strengthening program of their current max velocity, but you didn't alter their max velocity. And that's a mistake a lot of coaches make. So is somebody's max velocity been altered? That means their top end speed has been altered, and every percentage, if trained correctly, should be faster. Does that make sense?
A little bit. You're a little. I think you're a little over my head. I think you're a little. You're definitely smarter than me. So I'm trying to keep up.
Okay, so that 11 flat person, nobody who has a fly time of 303, 304 is going to run 1070.
So I think
So
this might be make it easier. So like I know in baseball, like home to first base, that home to first time is very important.
yes,
90 feet. So is there any
yeah,
way
30 meters. Yeah. So what is still in baseball? So if you look at a 100-meter runner, he's gonna have an acceleration pattern of 26 to 32 meters. So when we train baseball players, we train them to accelerate down to first base like a hurdler. So a hurdler only has a 5-step acceleration, 2-step transition phase, and by the 8th step, they're up in max velocity sprint position to clear the first hurdle, because you can't be in a dry phase trying to clear the first hurdle. So top end speed is faster than acceleration. So we teach the baseball guys, because they're running, keep it simple math, just say 30 meters, 30 yards. 30 yards is shorter, obviously, but just say, okay, we want 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, transition 6, 7. By the 8th step for a baseball player, it should be about 11 meters. Now you have 20 meters of top end speed, because top end speed is faster than acceleration speed. So what is your event demand? My event demand is baseball. The first base is 30 yards down. Okay, well, let's have an 8-step drive phase and then get up to top end and start moving. And so that's how we look at each scenario in each sport. And then we apply USA track and field high performance training protocols into the event demand. So for instance, a baseball player bats 4 times in a game. Now that batting 4 times in a game, they're trying to generate similar power as to what our hammer throwers and our discus throwers. So how do our discus throwers and hammer throwers throw? Are they using their arms? No. The shot putters that use a professional approach, which is a rotational approach in the circle, again, right, we're dealing with something similar in baseball. So a baseball bat is traveling maybe 260, 240 degrees in a swing, 280 degrees in a swing, and the force is being generated by the hips. So the pelvic floor and the hips are what's creating the power, both in sprinting, throwing, and batting. So those people need to have very, very, very powerful, explosive hips. You'll look at many of our shot putters, hammer throwers. These guys are weighing 300 plus, but without a drop step, you can put a 42 to 48 inch plow box in front of those guys, and there's big or bigger than NFL linemen. With no drop step, they'll jump straight up on that thing. So explosion in the hips, type 2B fast twitch muscle fiber development on a consistent basis. And then the conditioning component comes in with different flavors of high intensity anaerobic glycolytic loading. So to allow an athlete to throw through rounds or bat through, we got a double header. So we are going to bat 8 times today. So, okay, how do you quote condition that to be able to go through 162 games? And that's a separate discussion. So we need to assess what the athlete is doing. I'm batting 4 times, maximal output on each swing. If I make a connection, let's theoretically say they hit a double every time. So that's a total of 240 yards of running in that 2.5 hour game window. Combine that with an outfielder, center field, left field. Maybe the ball's hit to them 5 times on average in a game. So now we're looking at a total of 340 yards of sprinting in 4 60-yard intervals and 5 20-yard intervals spread out over 2.5 hours. So what is the dominant muscle fiber type for the event requirement? That would be type 2B fast twitch large motor unit for maximal output on swing and sprinting. And also the same in regards to the outfield play. So, okay, we've identified the dominant muscle fiber type. We've identified the dominant energy system, ATP-CP, creatine phosphate. And now there's a conditioning component. So then we have to get into the anaerobic glycolytic substrates in order for somebody to play 162 games in a year. Now, if you look at our athletes in track and field, they have a very unique quality compared to the other professional athletes that are out there. So if you take a world-class 400-meter runner or a world-class 200-meter specialist, these guys are running 10.5 to 11 months of the year. Now, the more they run, and they run infinitely more than any NFL player or infinitely more than any Major League Baseball player. Yet the more they run, the more they lift, the more they hop, the more they jump, the faster they go month over month. So they have the ability to train for 7 months and be faster than they were in month 3. They have the ability to train 9 months and to be faster than they were in month 5. How many Major League Baseball players time a 40 on fresh legs before the first game of the season, play 100 games, retime them, and are they faster? So what we have to assess when we see that, we have to assess how the workouts are structured during competition. Because our guys will start competition on indoors. Outdoor competition for the pro level guys and the collegiate guys usually starts in early April. And then April, May, June, July, August, they're just getting faster and faster and faster and faster through competition. And from a gap analysis as a elite sprint coach, when you look at that taper off, we have to evaluate what's occurring both for recovery and for stimulus in regards to the work being done between the games. Well, they travel. Our guys travel around the world. You know, they have to recover. Okay, so what are your modalities? I mean, how contemporary are you in your modalities for recovery? Because there's some very sophisticated, very healthy ways to recover. And we don't need to, cheat or anything like that. Or we can add that to a healthy diet with high quality supplementation, things like that.
Yeah, so a few things. I think I think what makes baseball it's so hard to, I don't know if recover is the right word, but what makes it hard to last physically, as you mentioned, from the start of the year to the end of the year is honestly, it's gonna sound crazy. It's all the standing around you do for hours and hours out in the sun every day, it seems like, right? Because you have all this time. It really is. It is. I'm telling you, you have all this time. You're out there in the sun, and then, you 10, 15, 20 minutes, you don't do anything, and then boom, out of nowhere, you sprint, right? And then you go back to your spot. 10, 15 minutes, you do nothing, then you sprint, right? And it's like, how would you...
Correct.
If you're training for...
So that goes back. Yeah, that's a good question, Patrick. So, when you're sitting in an idle position for an extended period of time, so it can, to reawaken the legs, there can be things that are done, just going to the outfield, right? So you're in the dugout, you're playing left field. Okay, you had an at-bat, and now you're going out to left field. You can reawaken the legs in different ways instead of just jogging out, right? And it's also about prep. So understanding how much rest you have between each rep within the event demand So 12 to 15 minutes, like you're saying. Okay, we understand that. So we can train for that in the training. So we can alter workouts to allow the athletes to feel more comfortable with a 12 to 15-minute break before high intensity neural output in the training program. And we condition them for that so it's more comfortable during the competition.
Got
Does
it.
that make sense?
Yes, no, 100%. You mentioned recovery, and I know for baseball, not sure, obviously not an expert by any means when it comes to track or really just even sprinting in general. But for
Sure.
baseball, some of these guys are getting done with their games at 10, 11 o'clock at night. What would
Yes.
recovery look like? So it sounded like you had some good ways, there's some right
Well,
ways.
we're using some very sophisticated methodologies. A lot of it is Tesla-based resonance therapies, where actually the athletes we're sending Tesla frequencies,
That's
resonances.
all like as in the car.
Yes, TESLA, but this science is delving into his real science, not a brand.
Yeah.
So we're using that. We're using very sophisticated sound frequencies that are tuned to cells in order to reduce inflammation. So for instance, the Tesla machine we use helps mitochondrial recovery by 28 to 34%. Interesting. So 45 minutes on that machine after a workout, I've just cut recovery by 1/3. We also have very sophisticated sound therapy machines that the athletes use, and those sounds are tuned because all matter, both inorganic matter and non-organic matter, has a specific frequency. So homeopathic medicine is based upon that premise. And then you start moving that into more of a quantum application in quantum physics. And now we're dealing with even a higher rate of recovery. So these are some of the methodologies that we're using within our training group without giving out too much so other people might want to use them. Those are the therapies we're using, and we're actually able to have guys come off extremely hard workouts, or maybe they travel for a meet, compete in the meet, come home the next day, and then after coming home the next day, they'll have these type of therapies, and there's no residual at all. They're ready to go 48 hours later. I mean, they feel great. And then you throw in the different type of body therapies that we use as well, and our guys, they can handle very high workloads or a lot of competitions over a 2 or 3 week window. Feel pretty good, really good actually.
A lot of different coaches are going to be listening or watching this. This is going to be, high school coaches, college coaches, pro coaches, amateur coaches. And I
Sure.
think one of the things is, you know, time and space constraints, obviously if it's in season versus off season. But what would you recommend?
Yes.
Like, okay, you're a baseball coach and you have a 15-year-old son, for example. Like, what are you doing on a day-by-day basis to help make sure that he gets faster along with his teammates?
In season or out of season?
We'll go in season because it's
So
in season.
yeah. So if you have a club baseball team and athletes are competing year round, more or less, it's similar to what we do. So we look at a season from the Olympic Games backwards. So I was just in a meeting for 2 hours with some NFL trainers. And what we were discussing is what are your most critical times? So maybe you have a local baseball game and you're playing local baseball for 2 months, and then okay, now we're going to Texas or Florida for a tournament. So the Olympic Games are much more important than a training meet in Los Angeles or Florida or Texas to an Olympic sprinter than the Olympic Games. So we're going to train and work through those meets and then use those meets as training and practice and analysis. And then when it comes to the bigger meets, maybe you're going to the Olympic trials, or you're on the Diamond League and you're in Shanghai or Doha in May or early June. Okay, now those are much more important meets as we move towards the Olympic trials. So now we're backing off. We're not training through those meets. We're going to train for those meets. So identifying the most critical times in a season to make sure, okay, we have to have very fresh legs at this point, and then recognizing the other meets as training meets. Same thing. So if you have a youth baseball kid who's a senior in high school, okay, same thing. I mean, how important is a high school game? How many scouts are at a high school game? Not many. Now, how many scouts are at a showcase game in Texas? How many scouts are at a showcase tournament in Florida? 10, 20, 30? Okay, well, you want to show out there. You want to run a fast 60. You want to play baseball on fresh legs.
One of the things you were talking about is how, hey, if you have, an important showcase coming up, you're running a 60-yard dash, and things like that, like how do you go about training for it? But
yeah, so less important games, things like this. Think of it in our terms, just running track is just getting you in general fitness. So you want to do specific training that actually makes you faster. So if
right,
you're
when you say all this, you're not advocating like players just like jog down to first base, right? They're still sprinting.
oh
It's what
heavens
they're
no,
doing.
no,
Yeah,
heavens no,
it's
no,
what they're
you're playing
doing
baseball all.
outside of the game.
Yeah. So I mean, if, for instance, if I have an elite high school sprinter, let's say, that elite high school sprinter, if he's running local track in California or Washington or Oregon, and let's say in high school he's a blue chip recruit, he can run 10-3 in the 100 meters. Okay, well, I much don't care about the local dual meet. It means nothing. So just train right through that meet. So maybe that meet's on a Friday in high school. Well, that if I'm working in conjunction with the high school sprint coach, then that we'll just train right through. We won't back off, freshen the legs up. Then we'll put them in events in the meet that are a training day, right? So the meet's just because you have no competition. There's no college recruiters. This isn't being put on YouTube. No one's, it's not relevant, but it's relevant because you're playing your sport and working on your skills. So he might play all his whole high school season, March and April that way. Okay, well, now we're into the playoffs in high school in May. And yeah, we'll back off, breathe, set it up, let the legs freshen up, the hips freshen up. Okay, now we'll go into that playoff so you can perform at a higher level. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So what would the actual training look like?
In regards to
Well, just in general, I
which
mean,
part?
we talk about kind of what we're talking about right now, like talk about, all right, important events versus not as important events. You're going to change seems like
Well, the non-important events you stay under load. The important events you come out of load.
what do you mean by that load?
So load being volume. So when you're coaching an athlete, you're coaching volume, intensity, frequency, sequencing. Those are the major. There's some other ones, but those are your major ones. What's the volume for the day, for the week, for the mesocycle? Mesocycle is a fancy way of saying 3 weeks or 30 days. You can do a mesocycle of 3 7-day periods or a mesocycle of 3 10-day periods. So what does all that look like? So we know how to load and deload through those cycles, managing volume, intensity, frequency, sequencing. And then we're able to manage the body's parasympathetic, sympathetic, endocrine system, also their ATP systems. So how are we forcing the body to produce ATP with these workouts? Are we relying on fat? Are we relying on glycogen? Are we relying on creatine phosphate? Are we relying on a combination of the three? So this comes into the application of the science. So there's a science component that I sent you in text. What is the event demand of baseball? Okay, well, it's nothing but sprinting and explosive hip movements in batting. So essentially, these guys need to train from an apex standpoint for maximum velocity, like a short sprinter and a long and triple jumper. Endurance components for their season, you get involved in anaerobic glycolytic loading with some special endurance one, but not too much. So it just depends on what phase of the season you're in, right? And what age you're at. I mean, it's going to look different for 11 and 12-year-olds and 13-year-olds than it is 15, 16, and 17-year-olds. As it will look different for somebody who's 19 through 21. So there's all these different components that you're managing to get the highest response from the body with where you're at in your cycle. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
When you're doing training sessions, like let's pick a range, that 19 to 21-year-old range. Are they?
Yep.
I know technique is obviously important when it comes to running too, right? I mean, you don't just, I'm sure there's
biomechanics are the body's way of positioning itself to apply force. So what makes someone fast is their power to weight ratio. How much do you weigh? And then how much can you deadlift? Now, why did I not say snatch? Why did I not say clean? Why did I not say squat? Because the deadlift is the one lift you can lift more than any other lift. Therefore, if you're striving for a power to weight ratio, you're going to go to the one lift you can lift heavier than any other lift. So that it's not that we don't do those other lifts, but those other lifts are in support of moving the deadlift higher. So with sprinters, we're looking for a minimum of 2.25 times body weight. And then as they progress up into the professional level, we're looking for 3 times. So that's how much horsepower you have in your car in relation to the body weight of the car. Well, that would just make power lifters fast, wouldn't it? Well, there's another component called the delivery window. So world-class sprinters on contact, on top-end speed, have a delivery window of 0.08 on contact. So if you think about that, those guys are able to do what? They're able to take 3 times their body weight and deliver that force in 8/100ths of a second. And when you can do that, you're very, very fast human being. Now, the biomechanics are what? That's me as a coach simply teaching an athlete to reposition their bodies to optimally apply force. So that is both true for an acceleration phase and true for a max velocity phase. So what is the best way to position your feet when you're in a drive phase, and what is the best way to position your feet when you go into top end speed? And also transition from drive to top end speed, because that should be a 2 to 3 step sequence. So that's what biomechanics do, right?
How long does it take you to change someone's biomechanics? And the reason I say that is I think a lot of times what I've heard anyway is, especially the 60-yard dash, that if you just get your start down, like you improve your start and your mechanics, you can get 3, 4, 5 tenths off your time.
Yeah, we can. Yeah, biomechanical expression can be a very good way to drop someone's time. Now, sometimes biomechanical expressions are very, very awkward. And when you see that, those are structural issues. So you have to address the body's structure through different body therapies, different types of modalities, in order to get the body to open up so it can function in a proper way. So there can be compensation patterns can exist in the bodies. Somebody who's a very fast sprinter fell off their bike when they were 11 and landed on their tailbone, and it hurt for 6 weeks, and now it's better. But now their SI joint's been out of position for 5 years because they're 15 now. Oh man, they have a really funny way when they they have a really funny way of moving their arms, and I can't get them to run the right way. Yeah, because their pelvic floor is out of position and their SI joint's locked, and it's never been addressed. So now you've got a compensation pattern that's been put into position, and you have to clean it. So when people come into our elite training group, I just got done working with some NFL players, and I had one of them came out on day one, and 5 years in the NFL, I mean, you're dinged up. So they went through a very intense sequencing on doing fascial reconstruction. So we don't really use massage therapists too much. We use fascial reconstruction and fascial reintegration, bringing the body back to an optimal state.
That's interesting.
Does that help?
Yeah, no, it's
yeah.
It's definitely a little bit above my head because again, my background is on the hitting side, and so a lot of what I've studied is the biomechanics, but more so the biomechanics of the swing itself and
Sure.
the brain and things like that. But so I find it very interesting. What I'm trying to do too is because again, there's so many baseball and softball coaches that are going to listen to this. I'm trying to find ways. Things that you can say that would help them out when they don't know nearly like the level of expertise that you're.
So a few things. When you do sprint training or any high intensity work, 90% or higher, you want to do it all on the same day. Otherwise you get training bleed because the central nervous system is in a constant state of fatigue. So my pro sprinters don't go all out 3 days in a row.
Okay.
They wouldn't do that, right? Because you're taxing the central nervous system to a point. What are you going to get on the third day? Nothing, because the CNS is completely cooked. So keep your high intensity work, your weight room work, your plyometric work, your sprinting work, all in one day. Okay. So now we're coming back doing the same work, but we're doing the same work on fresher legs. Therefore, you're going to get a higher result within practice. See, professional sprinters don't sprint every day. They sprint, they lift, they plyometric. Then the next day is some form of recovery day. That where the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous systems are really in a state of rest, moving at maybe 70 to 75% of top end. So the CNS is resting. The body is recovering. We're getting a lactic flush, maybe working on some form of biomechanic at that speeds on the track, things like that. Okay, so now we've flushed, we've reinforced biomechanics, we've held our core during the biomechanical work for stabilization purposes. Okay, that was a great recovery day. Now we're going to go get it again. Now the quality of the work on Wednesday will be better than if we sprinted on Tuesday. Because if we sprint on Monday and Tuesday and do that kind of work on Monday and Tuesday, and then you try to do it again on Wednesday, it's not going to be too pretty. Because they're neurally.
What if you lift on Monday and then sprint on Tuesday? Does that not make sense?
You can lift on Monday. Yeah, you can do that, but you really have to know what you're doing and how you're doing it. So what kind of lifting are you doing on Monday? Are you going for a PR?
No.
I wouldn't sprint on Tuesday.
No.
Are you doing submaximal work where you're doing sets of 4 or 5 for squats and you're at 65 to 70% of max? No problem. Right? Because you're below technically 72% of max. So you could do that. Absolutely. But be intelligent about it, because when you start mixing, I kind of gave you a general rule. When you start mixing, you really have to know how to manage the muscle fiber types and the energy systems prior to those days and after those days. So like you could do a full neural week where you sprint hard on Monday, you do hard plyometrics on Tuesday, maybe you take Wednesday off, and then you do something sub-maximal on Thursday, or maybe you go hard again on Thursday, you sprint on Thursday, then you do maybe some speed endurance on Friday or Saturday. Well, that's a lot of neural stress, similar to a week-long track meet like the Olympic trials. So the following week, you're going to be below 75% Monday through Friday.
Awesome. So, one of the things I don't think we've done yet, and that's kind of give a little bit of your background. And
Sure.
so I was wondering if you could maybe take, 30 seconds to a minute and just kind of explain to everybody your own background and how you got to be the expert you are when it comes to track and field, strength conditioning, all the above.
Absolutely. So, going all the way back to myself, I was an All-American in high school in the long jump. I was recruited by many of the major top universities in the country. I chose Washington State University at the time because it was a top 3 men's team in the nation, and Coach John Chaplin was the coach. Coach Chaplin is still a friend of mine. We still talk all the time. In fact, we're even doing a little collaboration work on world-class 800-meter runner, keeping him in the game. From Coach Chaplin was the head of the USATF high performance division for a decade. He went on from there to coach the United States, head coach for the United States Olympic team in Sydney. From there, he moved over and was the chief consultant to China's Olympic program in track and field and built that out. He was also the first investor in Nike, as Bowerman was one of his best friends. So that was my original coach and mentor. From there, I went on after college to have a family, and I saw that my children were athletic. I made a call, or I sent an email and made a call into the head of USA Track and Field's high performance sprints for women. His name's Tony Beanie. And Tony was gracious enough to take the time with me to teach me elite training protocols from the very best. So the 2 mentors that I've had, those were my original 2 mentors. And then my third mentor, as I got into the coaching ranks at the Olympic level, was Lauren Seagrave. And Coach Seagrave is the winningest Olympic coach by medal count in Olympic history in track and field. And he's done it all in the sprints and jumps with a smattering of a few medals outside of those. So I've been very, very fortunate to have some of the best people in the world as my mentors over the last 20 plus years. So what I tell people is a cow eats on everybody's lawn in the neighborhood, but the milk is their own. So I've been very fortunate to have very good mentors to guide me along over the last 20 plus years of high performance coaching.
Yeah, it's so important to have people that you can kind of lean on and learn from. And like you said, I like how you phrase that, be able to eventually create your own, by learning from everybody. So that was good.
Oh, yeah.
We talked before we started recording here about, base runners stealing bases, home to first time, how many times batters are out, just bang, bang play at first base. Let's start out with stealing bases, because this is something that, I don't know a coach anywhere, baseball anywhere, where they would want more guys to be able to steal more bases and get more players into scoring position to help them score more runs. So if you're starting to work with a player and they come to you like, okay, Mike, like we need them to be able to steal more bases.
Sure.
What are some things that you're going to be looking for from a technical standpoint? And then what are you wanting to try to implement with them to help them?
Well, there's different training protocols, but I'll jump right into the biomechanics, because you sent over a video of Mike Trout, and then you sent one over of Christian Coleman, who's the 6th fastest man in world history. So if you notice, when Trout went to steal the base, when he put his initial foot down, it was in front of him. Now, if you put your foot in front of you, you can't push off. So you have to wait to the center of your mass is actually over that foot in order to push. So that is a braking action. It's a micro braking action. Now, if you look at Coleman, when he came off the pedals out of those blocks, his initial contact was right underneath his pelvic floor. And being underneath his pelvic floor, it allows him to immediately push forward without any kind of braking action. So that's a big, big deal, because if you're going 30 yards down a baseline and you're coming out of the hole in an acceleration pattern to get yourself going and you're micro braking, I mean, you could definitively increase your stealing percentages through the roof by just teaching guys how to accelerate. So the guys that the two high school baseball guys that are in my training group right now, one of them, as I described, is 6'3", 220 pounds. He's a high school junior. He's a catcher, and he's running 671 in a 60-yard dash for me, and he's doing it on a baseball start, because we've taught them how to biomechanically move on initial movement. So your first three, especially your first three strike patterns, if you've noticed, when you extend your foot out in front of you, your shin angle decreases and your shin becomes perpendicular. Being a perpendicular shin is not efficient for a push. So if you look at Coleman, in earlier, as we were describing, as he contacted, initial contact was underneath the pelvic floor, you're immediately pushing through and are gone. And those are some of the things we teach the baseball guys, like, okay, how to swing, rotate your hips, and then initial contact is underneath you, and then explode to the second step and smoke, gone. This is how, we have high school boys up here running. I mean, the catcher, he's 6'3", 220. He'll probably be 225 next year. He'll probably run around a 6'5" mid-low auto. The freshman, Asher Strauss, he's already gone 6'79". He'll probably run somewhere around 6'3" mid in high school. And that's auto timing. So to us, these are standards, and then we can evaluate the age of the athlete. So for instance, we discussed the average Olympian in the 100 meters for men is around 26 and a half years old. So sprinting prime for men, somewhere between 24, 25, and 32, 33. Now people say, well, we've seen people run faster times than under 24. Yes, but the human body's anaerobic glycolytic pathways are not completely matured till a human being's 23. And what that allows us to do is to increase anaerobic loading, and it also helps with recovery. So understanding these things and understanding how to train properly for speed and power, this is why you see these Olympic sprinters, and you'll see them in Paris this year, that are 25, 26, 27, 28. That's kind of the age group in the 100 and 200 for the fastest men on planet Earth. It's also around the average age for many of the high jumpers and long and triple jumpers, who are the most explosive people along with the sprinters on the planet. So if your highest commodity is acceleration and speed, these are the training methodologies you want to be using, are the ones that we know and understand, that we work with our sprinters and jumpers, because they have the most powerful hips on the planet, right? So there's plyometric protocols, there's sprinting protocols, there's weight room protocols, and in the weight room, we focus on what we call myofibular hypertrophy. So there's two forms of hypertrophy. One is myofibular, one is sarcoplasmic. Sarcoplasmic hypertrophy is when you get into a high rep count and, 6 reps and above, and you're dealing with growing your mass, your muscle mass. But that high rep count, growing that muscle mass, is creating weight without improving the power to weight ratio of the athlete. So this is where we see many of our athletes training in our groups, and they go off to college or they become professional. And for instance, I was talking earlier about an NFL player who I trained here in Seattle. He went to a Power 5 school, and then that Power 5 school here in Seattle, in our group, he was running a 4.44 off a thumb pad, no hand time, at 17 years old. And after 5 years or 4 years at the Power 5 school, he went to the combine and ran a 4.58 and a 4.60. He didn't come to our training group. Then he went professional. He's been in the NFL for 5 years. Now he's running 4.7s. So he came in to get things fixed because he wants to stay on contract, and he's already down to a 4.43. We're coming in for another 8 weeks, and he'll run a 4.3 mid-low by the time he reports to the Minnesota Vikings. So we've gone from the 4.7s to the 4.3s in a very short window of time.
And would you attribute that to his training, or did his technique get worse over?
So good question. So when you're making someone fast, there's different variables. So biomechanics do come into play. But what are biomechanics? Biomechanics are nothing more than a optimal way to apply force. So when you're running, 90% of what you're overcoming is vertical gravity. So when you put your foot in the ground, there's some questions we need to ask. One is, how long is your foot in the ground? Secondly, how much force are you putting into the ground in that window of time in relation to your body weight? So a car weighs 100 pounds, it has 100 horsepower. Newton's second law of overcoming inertia, if you want to overcome inertia at a greater rate, you apply a greater force. Now, if we're going to apply a greater force, we need to add horsepower to that car. But we don't want to add body weight to the car. Now, if body weight is necessary, for instance, in the NFL, where several hits are taking place and we need the muscle fiber present in order for padding, then we get into managing both what we call sarcoplasmic hypertrophy growth, putting on mass, and then we're running a second metric on power to weight ratio, so we don't put weight on the car without increasing the horsepower in parallel. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because the power to weight ratio, when you're applying force into the ground with your foot, is critical. Very critical. So that's the horsepower. Now, the delivery window of a world-class sprinter is about 0.080, 1/100th of a second. Now, most of those sprinters on a deadlift are pulling anywhere from 2.5 to 3.2 times body weight. So if that sprinter weighs 200 pounds, the average DL on those guys is around 600. So you have 3 times body weight in power to weight ratio with your delivery window of 8/100ths. You're going to be a very, very, very fast human being. Now you see football players and you see power lifters and different people able to do very large weight in relation to their body weight, but their delivery window when they run, you can clock with a calendar. Then you get into the biomechanical component, which is the third component. So the biomechanical component is just repositioning the body between contact times for optimal force application. The fourth component that we take into consideration is the body itself. So the body can have asymmetrical loading patterns. It can have old injuries that cause new injuries. I fell off my bike when I was 12. I had a really bad tailbone bruise, and now your right hip clicks when you run. Well, the x-rays showed nothing. But the fascial plane and all kinds of fascial binding and tension can occur in there. Scar tissue can occur as well, and that's pulling your hip out of position. So now we have to go in using different methodologies that we have and reopen the fascial plane, realign the hip, reset the dural sheath on the spine into a complete neutral, realign the skull bones and the pelvic floor, and go forward from there. So, for instance, Paolo Banchero, who was the NBA Rookie of the Year last year, he trained in our training group for quite a while. Paolo went off to Duke and down to Orlando, and he's done very well. Good, hardworking kid with his head on his shoulders. And he got a pretty bad pop. He got elbowed in the neck by Joel Embiid. And he was unable at the time to raise his shooting arm above his shoulder. X-rays showed nothing. MRI showed nothing. So we sent down one of our key people, and within 25 minutes, he was shooting jump shots on the floor. Now, when our person went in there to work on Paolo, the team doctor, as an orthopedic surgeon, was present. All the trainers were present, and all the PTs were present. And it took one of our people down there, flew down there, 25 minutes, and he was shooting jump shots, and that was it. So we have some very unique tools that we use. So especially for baseball people, golfers, people that shot putters, these are asymmetrical loading events where you're loading one side of your body repeatedly over and over and over again. And you can see these patterns in athletes, but no one really addresses them. And it extends the life of the athlete as well, because asymmetrical loading patterns on high power force output competition, baseball, which is baseball, max sprinting, max hitting, max throwing, these are all within a power speed development type demand. Yes, if you're going to drive your car and you're going to bring that needle all the way over every time you train and every time you compete, you need to make sure that your body's symmetry is perfect.
Wow, that was a very good segment right there. A lot to unpack. First of all, I would say right now it's May when we're recording this, right? So it's in season for a lot of baseball. Well, not all, a lot of baseball. Every baseball coach who's going to be your players listening to this.
Yep.
Maybe they're playing 5-6 games a week, right? They're practicing, They're doing, maybe a few lifts here and there, but maybe the coach is like, I still want these guys to continue to get faster. I mean, obviously they're going to continue to play all the way through the summer and even into the fall. What would you recommend for a lot of these coaches? And it could be very simple, and it could also be there's not much you can do either. But
no,
but for coaches with limited knowledge, like myself, compared to somebody like you, what would you say if you're coaching a team? Like, what would you do to help implement anything in a practice design setting, or just anything to help them continue to get faster even during the season with everything else that they're doing on top of that?
So there would be three components that I would definitively recommend. So when it comes to supplementation, most supplementation focus is very rudimentary. It's almost basic. So we're working with some of the top biohacker doctors in the world, people that are actually lecturing at the World Biohacking Conference in Dubai, Indonesia. These people are part of our team. And we work on cellular optimization for recovery. You do have a food component, of course, but I won't dive into that right now. But we do have, so we're looking at cellular optimization. We have some very unique tools there as well, working with these top biohackers around the world, Germany, the United States, Italy, different places. Also, you would want to focus on what I talked about. So just bringing in like some of the top body workers out there in the world to be able to keep optimizing those bodies. At the same time, there would be a plyometric in a specific weight room component. There's a way to recover from these games. If a team has 3-4 games in a week, how do you recover after that? What are we doing to recover? Right? Mm-hmm. So how are we, if our athletes run more, jump more, throw more, then any other athletes on the planet. Why do our guys train for 6 months, fall, indoor, start outdoor training, and then start competing 6.5, 7 months into training and compete for another 4 months, 3.5 to 4 months? The more they run, the more they throw, the more they jump, the faster, higher, further they run, jump, and throw. So we have those training protocols because we know how to manage the body's, many of the systems in the body, but the muscle fiber type systems, the recovery systems, we're getting into mitochondrial recovery and inflammation, all kinds of things like this. And then keeping that power force output during competition. So during competition, how do you maintain or micro increase your power and force output? So if you have a baseball player who can run 60 yards in, let's say, 684 at the beginning of the season, after 80 games, we take a timing on him, and maybe he's at 682 or 680 after half the season. So that's where high performance track and field coaches I've seen are the best in the world at this, and we love to share it. I mean, we love my friends. We love helping other people. We love helping the football coaches and the basketball coaches, prepare for these things. Right.
So what would be like if you're a high school coach, for example, where like, yeah, you got a pretty small budget, time and space are limited. What would be some things that a high school coach should implement?
Something simple, right? So like, how do you maintain your output? Well, first of all, in the weight room, the deadlift is the most critical lift in creating power to weight ratio differential. And the reason it is the one lift that you can lift more than any other lift. You can lift more than a clean, more than a snatch, more than a squat, more than any other lift is a deadlift. So if you're going to increase your power to weight ratio, you want to use the one lift that you can lift more weight than any other lift to get that ratio where it needs to be. It's also an eccentric lift where you're lengthening your posterior chain, your entire leg is lengthening, and you're engaging your posterior chain in order to help with the power to weight ratio development. And then when you're sprinting at top end speed, you're doing what? You're lengthening your leg to apply force. So I would be maintaining a routine, a deadlift routine, where there's not a lot of lifting involved. So when you get into competition, somebody who has a track meet on Saturday, and then they have another track meet on Saturday, then they have another track meet on Saturday, you're not really training. You're stimulating what you want into order to elicit a response from the body. So if I go in and I tell my athlete, okay, all I want you to do is go to the weight room today. I want you to put 70% on your deadlift bar. I want you to do a set of 5. I want you to rest 4 minutes. Why 4 minutes? Because we want our creatine phosphate pools in regards to our ATP production to come back up. So that 4-minute window allows the creatine phosphate to come back up, and ATP production, we have creatine phosphate, we have glycogen, and we have fat. Now, creatine phosphate is very unique in that it fires our muscles. It's a strong, in simplistic terms, it's a stronger form of andesine triphosphate for power and force output. So rest 4 minutes, then do a set of 3 at 75. Rest 4 minutes and do a set of 2 at 90 and leave.
That's it.
That's it. You don't need to train it. You've trained it. You need to stimulate it to keep it in place. That's it.
And that'd be before a game or after?
Yeah, we have other protocols that are much more detailed, but I'll save those. I'll save the intellectual property on that one. You would do that, let's say I would do that maybe 48 hours before you play.
Okay.
48 hours before you play. You could even do it the day before you play.
Not
But
the day
40,
of? Because what if you have games every day for 7 straight days?
you could do it the day of, but you have to be a bit more sophisticated in the management of the athlete to do it the day of. So, for instance, Tyson Gay, who holds the American record in the 100 meters of 9.69, he set that in Berlin in 2009, trying to run Bolt down when he set the world record. Tyson Gay, when he was competing, Tyson would go into the weight room 45 minutes before he would sprint. And he would do what? He would deadlift at least 90% of max.
45
So the
minutes
body,
before you went out and did the 100 meter?
correct. Why would he do that? Well, that one lift didn't fatigue you. That one lift was a stimulus into the body's endocrine system. The body's going to release a large amount of HGH because of that lift, right? Then he goes out, warms up on the practice track, and then goes into the stadium and loads in the blocks. So he was using that piece as a stimulus to prep the endocrine system for competition. So we understand all these things. We manage many, many, many variables in the human body to create speed and power and to maintain speed and power month after month after month after month. Now, there's plyometric protocols we use as well, which are a little more sophisticated in conjunction with the weight room, or you could just do the standalone. But I would just recommend that one thing will give you a good high yielding return. Now, if someone's doing a deadlift and you're a high school, because your question was related to high school, I might move it to squat. And the reason is because most high school kids are asymmetrically loading their bodies. Their bodies have not been aligned and optimized, so they don't know how to efficiently deadlift properly. Our weight coach here in Seattle is Todd Christensen. Todd's one of the top powerlifting coaches in the United States, 35 world titles, athletes from 5 different countries, 10 world records. So my athletes are spoiled in the weight room working with someone like Todd. So if you have a high school weight coach, I might move it to a squat where it doesn't expose the back so much, right? It doesn't expose the back so much. The problem with the squat, and we squat in powerlifting style, is the squat is a quad dominant exercise from 0 to 90 degrees of the knee. The posterior chain isn't really working until you get past 90 degrees. So that's why we squat to 120 in order to have the posterior and anterior chain working in conjunction on a single lift, just like a deadlift. Your initial pull is coming through your quads, and then once it's leaving the ground between 14 and 18 inches, now you're really getting after your posterior chain if you're properly deadlifting, and then you're able to build that posterior chain, which is critical to top end sprinting, where your anterior front side is involved with your acceleration patterns. So what we find often with baseball and basketball players and football players that come into our training group, but mostly the baseball and basketball guys, is you'll see these very large quads and the hamstrings are almost non-existent. If you took a picture on some of our top sprinters, the hamstring looks like an archer's bow. It's highly developed, as are the glutes, because that area is associated with your top end speed. So we want to get after it. So if you're looking at a baseball player who can run a 6'8", 6'9", and you see these dominant quads, well, then we have to work. We have to work in the weight room on getting that posterior chain properly developed. And because when you change someone's top end speed, you change their acceleration capabilities. If you're pulling sleds and using parachutes or doing all this resistance work, that resistance work is going to dull out your top end speed.
What do you think about all that stuff? Parachutes, sled pushes,
We don't use them.
don't use them.
No. So, for instance, you can buy these, 1080 sprints or parachutes or sleds. When you do this kind of work, you get strong. But what are you training the body to do? You're training the body to apply force and power in a very long window of time. And repeated use of that will cause the top end speed to dull dramatically. So I got a call from a track and field agent who's a friend of mine, Mario Bassani. Ciao, Mario. And he was representing at the time Richard Kilty, the European champion in the 60, world top 5. And we had been discussing sleds earlier in the summertime. And when we were in the same city together getting some food. And I told him, no, don't use them, especially with your short sprinters, because it's going to dull their top end. And Richard Kilty, who was his client at the time, had switched coaches, and the coach wanted to use a sled. So he called me after 6 weeks with this new coach, and they did a fly 30 time on him, which is how we measure maximum velocity. And he had completely dulled out. His top end was junk. So you have to be intelligent, and then you have to be intelligent on how you accelerate into your top end. So for a baseball player who's only got 30 yards, baseball players we teach to accelerate over 5 steps and come up and go, because top end speed running is faster than acceleration. So why would you want to accelerate halfway down the baseball line for 15 yards? 1, 2, 3, transition, 4, 5, up, move. Because top end speed is faster than acceleration. So why are you accelerating 10, 12, 15, 20 yards down the baseline? That makes no sense. So it's the same thing when the kids go into time a 60 or an NFL guy goes into time a 40. We train those guys like 110 high hurdlers. So our 100 meter runners accelerate for 24 to 26 yards with 2 transition steps, and they start coming up around 31, 32, 33 yards down the track into their top end. But you're not running 100 meters. You're only running, if you're being timed, you're running 60 yards or 40 yards. So we teach them to run it like a 110 high hurdler. So you have 5 acceleration steps, transition 6, 7. The 8th step, you're completely up and sprinting because you have to clear the first hurdle in top end sprint position. So why would you accelerate 20, 30 yards on a 40-yard dash, which we see all the time? And me and my friends, it just kind of makes us, kind of breaks our hearts a little bit, because these kids could have much faster times if they were properly taught how to get timed for the distance they're being timed in.
One of the cool things that I've really enjoyed about this podcast is, you have people listening from all over the place in the United States and even other countries too. And because
Sure.
of that, you'll have some kids who will listen to this who may not necessarily have, the resources or to be able to work with somebody like yourself,
Yeah.
just in the middle of nowhere, honestly. But they still want to get faster, right? And so I think the thing is, a lot of baseball showcases, they do the 60-yard dash time. And
Sure.
so if you don't know anything about a player and they're like, I want to improve the 60-yard dash time, it's, let's just say it's the off season, so you don't have to worry about games or anything.
Yep.
What should they be running 60 yards on a daily basis? Should they be running less than that? Like, what should they be doing in a simple manner?
So that's a good question. Whenever you do high force output, you want to do it on fresh legs.
Okay.
It's a simple rule. Now, we can violate that rule within my circle, but we don't violate it often. So you want, if you're going to sprint, if you're going to lift, if you're going to do plyometric work, it should be done on fresh legs. So don't go 5-mile runs, 3-mile runs. These type of things for baseball players are meaningless. So it's a that we call that GPP, general physical preparation. If you're a baseball player, basketball player, football player, et cetera, you need SPP, specific physical preparation. So if you look at the event demand of a baseball game, which I sent over to you earlier, it's all power and speed work. In fact, it's power and speed work very similar to a short indoor 60-meter specialist and a long and triple jumper who have about a 30, 35-meter approach on a runway. So how those people train is how the baseball guys should be training. Now, you got 162 games, so how do you build in endurance? That's a separate conversation. But you have to do it within the event demand. So you don't want to rob Peter to pay Paul. You don't want to go out on a 2-mile run and build type 1 slow twitch muscle fiber. At the same time, you're trying to build type 2B fast twitch muscle fiber. We want to not rob Peter to pay Paul. So how do we get, quote, fit for those 162 games, right? Separate conversation. But for the high school baseball kid that has no resources that might be watching this, do this 2 times a week. Single leg hop stairs, 20 contacts each leg. That equals 1 set. Rest 4 minutes to get your creatine phosphate pools back, and repeat that 4 more times. Go home.
Wait. That's it? That's it?
That's it. Wait 48 to 72 hours. Turn around. Go to a stadium. Speed broad jump stairs. So broad jump the stairs, but continuously. We call it speed broad jumping. Speed broad jump the stairs. 8 contacts. That's it. Rest 3 to 3.5 minutes. Repeat that 4 more times. Now, as that becomes easier, you put on a weight vest on the single leg hops on the stairs, 6 pounds only. It should never exceed 5% of your body weight. Don't use ankle weights. Don't use wrist weights. Don't hold dumbbells. When you see people doing those things, the trainers don't know what they're doing. Because when you load the body, you want to load always proximal to distal. Because if you don't, you're changing your center of mass and gravity. At the same time, you're exposing your joint cartilage to erosion. So put a weight vest on, no more than 5% body weight, start out maybe 6 pounds, and repeat what I just shared. And see if it changes your speed over 6 weeks. Now, if you're going out on those runs, well, you're robbing Peter to pay Paul. You're going to find that you have somewhat of an uptake, but not too much. Now, if you do that...
It's interesting you didn't mention anything about actual sprinting.
Correct. Because getting into sprinting and biomechanics of sprinting, there are a few competent people out there at a high school level that can teach the biomechanics of sprinting and acceleration. So without being, quote, misguided, possibly, with good intentions always, it's simpler to just improve the delivery window, because that kind of work will help that kind of work without the weight room, that kind of work will help the power to weight ratio of the body. In parallel, it's going to shorten the delivery window of the body, and it's going to bring greater leg tautness. So we want to get that leg to apply more kinetic force. We want a stiffer leg, not stiffer meaning I can't stretch stiffer, but higher kinetic energy, similar to having 2 springs that are identical, and each spring can only hold 300 pounds of mass maximum. But when you put the 300 pounds on each spring, one descends 1 inch, one descends 4 inches. Now they're both at maximum. But what we know about the one that descended 1 inch is that it has a greater kinetic energy than the one that descended 4. In common vernacular, we would say it's a stiffer spring. So to create that tautness in the leg is the plyometric component. So I tried to create a couple workouts for you right now that all you need is some stadium stairs or the stairs in your house, possibly.
So what about this? So for this hypothetical high school kid that we continue to talk about,
Yeah.
he has a showcase coming up in 8 weeks or 16 weeks.
Yeah.
He shouldn't practice actual running at all until then?
Uh, well, he can sprint and run. Sure. I mean,
Okay.
go out.
I guess, yeah, that's what I'm asking. Like, what should he be doing in terms of that?
I would be doing short work, 50-meter sprints on 4 minutes of rest, maybe like 6 of them. Right. And don't do them on back-to-back days.
So
My
that you gave the workout of the stadium stairs, and so would that be the same day as those or a different day?
So now you're getting into integrating different forms of stimulus for speed development. So yeah, you can do some plyometric work integrated in with your running work as well. You could do, but you wouldn't do 2 full workouts of each. You might split it down the middle, right? You might split it down the middle. So training for speed is very specific. It's different than training for aerobic capacity. Aerobic capacity, you can just send guys on different flavors of runs. But when it comes to training for speed, it's more running actually slows you down.
So you
So you
said
want to,
four sets of 50 meters?
no, not 4 sets. No, no, no. Now you're getting into 800-meter workouts. You want something on the lines of maybe sprint 50 meters 6 times, 4 minutes rest to 5 minutes rest between each one. That's it.
Okay. Okay.
That's it.
Last question I have for you, and this is something that we had talked about, and I'm pulling up the visual of the Mike Trout um, stolen base that you were not a fan of. Um,
Horrible.
he's, he's horrible. Um, here it is right here. Okay,
Yeah.
Mike Trout. So I know earlier you had talked
So
about.
he puts his foot down. Watch.
Okay,
Okay.
so we'll
So
start it. So he's in it. He's in the stance right now. So I
now
think
let's see.
sometimes. Go ahead. I'll let you walk through it.
Okay. So watch where that left leg makes its initial contact. Okay. So he's pulling his left leg through. Okay. And he should put it down right about somewhere between. Hold on. Yeah, this is not. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So right about here, he should right back there. He should have put his foot down. So when he puts his foot down here, go ahead, go forward, please. And he puts his foot down right there.
Mhm.
You see the gap? You see the gap between his knees? That gap, his
Right
hips are
here.
complete. Yes, his hips are completely behind his front foot. His shin isn't perpendicular, but it's almost perpendicular. We can't push off our foot with a perpendicular shin. So he can't push off that left foot until his hips are completely over that left foot and that right knee is in conjunction and even with the left knee. So he's losing substantial time on this initial push. So if you go over to the Coleman picture I sent you, can you pull up that Coleman picture,
Oh, the picture.
Christian? Yes, please. Just pull up that picture of Christian on contact, who has a very, very sound acceleration pattern.
Right here.
I still see Trout. Yes. So that picture, you see how Christian has contacted the ground And on initial contact of that left foot, the right foot, the knees are even, and he's striking the ground underneath his pelvic floor.
Yeah, that
Even
actually looks weird.
it does look weird, but look at his shin angle.
That's like perfect.
The deeper the shin angle, the more powerful the push. We all know that when our car gets stalled on the road, or we'd have to help a friend push his car. And if you look at Trout's shin angle on initial contact, it's almost perpendicular right there. That is horrible. So Christian is now in immediate position to push. So what we teach the athletes, we have very sophisticated methodologies of helping athletes, baseball, football, track and field, on acceleration patterns. So I know, based on my athlete's trochanter length, the exact contact pattern for 100 meters down the track. So they don't have to wonder where to push. We actually tape the track based on their trochanter length, which tells us their optimal stride pattern through acceleration to the end of the race. So if you want a simple rule without using all our calculators, so watch Christian, contact. Look at the depth of his knee. Way more powerful with that angle to push through than Trout. Trout can't even push yet, and his shin is perpendicular. So he's going to have to wait. Trout is waiting for his hips to get over his left foot, and he's waiting for his right leg to pull through. He is sacrificing substantial amounts of time on his first step. Now with baseball players, we can actually measure the track as well, or in their case, it would be a baseball diamond, turf, dirt, doesn't matter. And we put those markers down, and they learn to strike them and accelerate out of the box. In 30 yards, guys are picking up a step or more sometimes. Just us working that high technical component for them.
So Trout's left foot should be closer to his right?
Oh, yeah. His left foot should be at least underneath his pelvic bowl, underneath his hips.
Like right here.
Yeah. So if you think of his femur head, his left femur head, that left foot should be underneath that left femur head. Instead, it's in front.
Gotcha.
Simultaneously, he's not pulling his right leg through very fast. So when he turns to run, that left foot needs to come down much quicker, and he needs to snap that right leg through and then bring it down quick, because he's still in an acceleration pattern. So don't let that knee rise and get way up in front of you, and then you have to bring your foot back down. These are all things that we take the athletes through. We've had guys drop, home base to first, picking up a step or 3/4 of a step in just like the first 4 to 5 weeks with us, and understanding how to push through that.
That's awesome. Well, Mike, this has been incredible, man. It's been a great education just for myself, and I'm sure for everybody listening too. If somebody wants to follow you, reach out to you, what's the best way to get in contact with you?
Well, the social media stuff has been lacking over the years, but if you want to email me to talk to me, just email Coach Mike at doylesportsperformance.com. Coach Mike at doylesportsperformance.com.
How do you spell Doyle?
Doyle sportsperformance.com.
We'll put that in the show notes too. We'll put that link in the show notes.
And I will have a website going up. I'm told by June, first week of June is what I'm told.
Okay.
And that's CoachMikeCunliffe.com. CoachMikeCunliffe.com. CUN as in Nancy, L as in Larry, I as in ink, F is in Frank, E on the end.com.
You're the man, legend himself. Mike, thanks for coming on, man.
Thank you, brother. Anytime.